Vicki Hogarth, and this is a CHCO NewsBreak26 special report. On Monday, March 14th, New Brunswick lifted all COVID-19 restrictions and ended the mandatory order. Here to discuss this with us is Chief Medical Officer of New Brunswick, Dr. Jennifer Russell. Thank you for being here today, Dr. Russell.
You're very welcome, Vicki.
So New Brunswick has lifted masking requirements, social distancing, and even isolation. Can you tell me a little bit about why you think now is the right time to do this?
So as you know, Vicki, throughout the pandemic, we've really tried to always balance the public health measures in terms of protecting the population and our hospital system with negative impacts. And at this time, our modeling shows that for those 19 and younger, we've passed the Omicron peak, and we have 66% of our population that is vaccinated and boosted. And our hospitalizations, the modeling for that had showed that we were going to be in the range of 100, which we are. And we always expect cases to go up and some hospitalizations to go up after measures are lifted with each phase. And so we do expect a blip, but that's, again, we are expecting it. And then we're expecting it to go down after that. The regional health authorities have worked really hard to make sure that they can shift services and resources around to continue to manage at this time. So with all of those things combined, we were confident in our recommendation right now to lift the measures.
Okay, and when you say a blip, an increase, is it significant?
No, not at all. But again, we just want to make sure people aren't surprised or they're not expecting it. So we are expecting a slight increase at this time. But what's really going to continue to be in our favor is the fact that, yes, we're lifting the mandatory order, but that doesn't mean the pandemic is over. And all the tools in our toolbox that we've learned to use over the last 2 years are still super important. So we still expect that people will continue to use many of the public health measures and strategies that they have been using over the last 2 years. Stay home when you're sick. Wear a mask if you're vulnerable or you have people in your family or close contacts that are vulnerable. We do expect that people will continue to physically distance and wash their hands. It's really important, and get tested. We are still offering POCT testing. We are still offering PCR testing. And if you haven't been vaccinated, please get vaccinated and boosted, because that is the best protection.
Mm-hmm. As far as isolation goes, if you are asymptomatic and you test positive, just trying to navigate what that means in terms of it not being mandatory that you isolate. If you're asymptomatic, can you still go to work, or what precautions would you take if you were still positive?
Those people are encouraged to stay home if they have symptoms, and they're encouraged if they don't have symptoms and they do go to work to wear a mask.
Okay. All right. And then what about the future of testing? You said it won't change much, but how will it look like, and how will it be reported?
As of right now, the testing itself won't change, but you are correct. The dashboard, that information is going to be released each Tuesday. And across the country, that's the same frequency that we're expecting other provinces to report as well.
Okay. And in terms of the vaccine rollout, is a fourth dose something that we can look forward to? Will it roll out around the same time as the flu shot? What does the future of the vaccine look like?
I think for the general population, that's not in the cards at the moment. But, you know, we do have other technologies for vaccination being researched right now. So there could be other things in the future that we would recommend. That fourth dose right now, I can see happening for those who are immune compromised, because for them, their full series is considered 3 doses. Mm-hmm. So that fourth dose would be considered a booster for those people who are have immune their immune systems are compromised.
For those people and for vulnerable people, what's your advice to them going forward? I know for people who are more vulnerable, this is sort of a mixed feeling situation of the idea of all restrictions being lifted.
There are a lot of emotions right now, Vicki, you know, from the range of anger and frustration to fear to people who are relieved. Mm-hmm. So I think the fact that the mandatory order is lifted does not mean that we are not encouraging all of the different public health measures to continue to be used by individuals. That is something that we really want people to understand, is that we do encourage people to continue masking, especially if you're vulnerable, especially if you have somebody in your close contacts who is vulnerable. So, you know, my daughter's she went back to school today after the March break. There's somebody in one of her classrooms that has a chronic illness, And the students in that class are choosing to mask for that reason.
What are you looking forward to in terms of going back to normal? I know that we are all used to seeing you as our Chief Medical Officer for the past 2 years. You're also an accomplished musician. Are there things you're looking forward to as we go back to normal?
Well, I hesitate to say normal because the pandemic is not over until the World Health Organization declares it over. And Theresa Tam at the national level is saying we need to continue to be vigilant and watch for more variants and watch for more outbreaks and surges in cases. So right now is a transition period. We will be planning. Public health work won't stop. So I don't think it'll be a turn on-off switch, but certainly I haven't really participated that much in very much many musical events other than in the audience. I am looking forward to performing with the New Brunswick Youth Orchestra. They've invited me to play a piece with them in a couple of upcoming shows on my saxophone. So I'll be in with the other sax players, so it's not a solo or anything, but just to be able to participate in a musical event is something to look forward to for sure.
Obviously, you mentioned there is a subvariant of Omicron. Should we be expecting more variants to pop up, and could they be more severe than Omicron?
Well, the definition of a variant of concern is that it has properties that either make it more transmissible or have more severe symptoms, or both. So these types of things with respect to variants, we do expect to see in the future. We can't predict which of those properties it will have. But again, we have to keep monitoring, and we'll keep doing that surveillance work. We're not living in a vacuum here in New Brunswick. So what's happening elsewhere in the country and other countries around the world does still affect us.
And finally, is there anything that could trigger a certain threshold of hospitalizations that could trigger a return to restrictions?
Never say never, Vicki. We know that, again, if there are outbreaks with new variants and surges in cases, that we will have to look at this again. I think the lessons learned around the country and around the world is whatever measures you do put in place, we always want to make sure they're balanced against the social determinants of health and the negative impacts on the social determinants of health. Obviously, issues with education and mental health and people's ability to earn an income. Those are all things that are negatively impacted when we have surges in cases and have to impose very strict measures. So at this point in time, we can't rule anything out. But what we can do is make sure that we're prepared. So get vaccinated, get boosted, continue to mask if you're vulnerable, if you have vulnerable people in your close circles, and continue to hand wash. That's going to continue to be very, very important. As you know, some measures, including masking and proof of vaccination, will continue to be required for things like air travel, etc. So this is not going away just because the mandatory order is being lifted. We're just trying to transfer the responsibility for those risk assessments at an individual basis to the population who have been so great at complying and cooperating throughout the pandemic. So we're just at another phase, but that doesn't mean there aren't more phases to come and more learnings.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today, and thank you for all you continue to do.
Thanks, Vicki.
That was Chief Medical Officer of New Brunswick, Dr. Jennifer Russell. I'm Vicki Hogarth, and this has been a CHCO NewsBreak26 special report.
A news and public affairs production of CHCO-TV, New Brunswick's only source for independent community television.